It's funny, actually, we can probably touch in on it a little bit later as well, but I used to be a really hardcore skeptic of anything related to UFOs. And then my fiance and I were driving through Arizona, and I think we were passing through, like, we were maybe like 10, 15 miles outside of Tucson, saw a string of, initially it was like 3 lights that were just moving in the pattern that was consistent with each other, and it made sense, like thinking like, oh, okay, there's some planes, and then a bunch of them started just like lighting up after, until there was probably like 40 of them, and they all started really picking up speed, stopped in the middle of the air, and then took off in a completely different direction, left the atmosphere.
I think because I asked you, I just walked into the office once and I was just like, you ever seen anything crazy in the sky? And you're like, actually last week. And I'm like, wow, about the freaking time that I asked that.
Actually, that was a huge kind of linchpin moment for me in my personal development as well, because I've always been a big fan of Discordianism. And one of the fathers of Discordianism is a fellow by the name of Robert Anton Wilson.
Okay, now I've heard that name for some.
And I adore that man. He wrote a book that I recommend everyone who can read in English read.
Yes, everybody who can read in English read it. Write it down now, so.
It's called Cosmic Trigger.
Boom, Cosmic Trigger.
And it is, it's really interesting. It's nonfiction. It's just kind of him just shooting the shit. Yeah. But he draws really interesting and really strong parallels between a lot of ufology and then a lot of like the Crowleyan Thelemic occult. And then ties a lot of that back to ancient mythology. And then brings it all together with the Illuminati conspiracy.
Oh boy, okay.
And he shows the ties and the parallels between all of them. But my favorite part about the way that he writes is he starts every topic just kind of like, well, maybe, possibly. And then he really kind of builds it up as like, well, this might actually be happening. And then he fucking just destroys it. Like, this is all bullshit. Like, they're all lying to you.
Yeah.
And then he sprinkles right at the end, but maybe they're not.
Yeah. Dude, so it's like one of those, like, you're just like, what am I doing here? Like, I just lost my train of thought there. So that was Cosmic Trigger. Now, I got a question, actually. You were talking about, okay, so I looked up some of the Gnosticism. So, Hermetic and anti-cosmic, specifically. And that's that there's no... They're like non-cosmic beings or something?
So, anti-cosmic Gnosticism is... a serious rabbit hole. I'll start off by saying,
let's start small and get broader.
Yeah, so there's a really good kind of segue into that, and the best way to kind of approach it is to talk about Satanism as a whole. Now, Satanism, as it's kind of currently understood in the zeitgeist, is generally thought to be a very very socially conscious, atheistic pseudo-religion, where it's all just, kind of psychodramatic effect. A lot of it's just shock value. And that's what most people understand Satanism is. And for a lot of people, that is what Satanism is. But Satanism is a very strange term. In that whole brand of Satanism kind of emerged with Anton LaVey's Church of Satan.
Okay, so that's LaVeyan?
Yep,
Luciferian? Or...
So Luciferianism is a totally different ballgame.
Well, there we go. We're going to get into this. This is nice. Okay, so back to LaVey.
Yep, LaVeyan Satanism was very much that kind of atheistic perspective where it's really... just all this ritual, all this garb, and all the imagery is just for psychodramatic effect.
Okay, I was going to say, so it's not like, you're not like, I believe that Satan is all around me, and it's just for the aesthetic, I guess is what you would call it?
Yeah, it's entirely for the aesthetic. It's for, I think the best way to put it is emotional resonance. You find that a lot of these names, a lot of these symbols, and this imagery conveys a really powerful message and really powerful feeling. So you use that as a psychological tool to help you develop the self-conscious, or not self-consciousness, the self-worth and the self-love that you're trying to manifest.
Okay.
And that's what LaVeyan Satanism is. But on the other side of that, LaVeyan Satanism is basically objectivism with a pentagram spray painted on the front.
Okay, yeah.
It's very much influenced by, and when I say influenced by, I mean Anton LaVey straight up plagiarizes in the Satanic Bible Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard, which is an interesting read, but it's very much it's a political manifesto.
Yeah.
And it's very much, if you have the power to do something, you have the right to do something. And Anton LaVey kind of takes that and interprets it in two ways, where he sharpens it and he softens it.
Yeah.
He sharpens it by throwing a pentagram on the front of it and putting black burning candles around it.
Yeah.
And then he softens it by saying, but don't do mean things to people. Like, don't hurt people unless they hurt you, and then you can.
Okay, well, that was one of those things where I'm like, okay, so it's kind of like dance around this, like, you have all this right to do whatever, and that could be taken by, any party, any direction. Well, I think that the problem is that a lot of people have that, like, where I was going to ask one question was, I'm just like, what do people get wrong about Satanism? And it's like, a lot of it is probably everybody's just like, so you're out there sacrificing goats and people and virgins and...
Yeah, and especially talking about this like atheistic brand of Satanism.
Yeah.
There's no sacrifice involved, and the ritual involved conveys no conviction other than, hey guys, isn't this fun?
Yeah, like they're like, look, we just murdered that dove for no reason.
Exactly.
Whatever you use.
It's always LaVeyan Satanism, at least, is always really symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
That as far as actual action goes, the furthest extreme that they go to is usually using a naked person as an altar.
Yeah.
Where they have a naked person lie at a table so that the whole crowd can get horny.
Yeah, what's that? There's something about sex magic, or is that like something completely different?
Well, sex magic, I would say in LaVeyan Satanism, using the term magic at all is kind of a misnomer because they don't believe it really does anything. But sex magic plays a huge role in a lot of the other brands of Satanism that we're definitely going to get into.
Yeah.
The other main atheistic Satanism, as far as an entity that exists right now, is the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple is not a religious organization. They are a political activist organization.
Now, could you, I guess, break down like the political side of like Satanism versus like the actual religious worship ritual side of it, I guess?
Yeah, and so as far as atheistic Satanism goes, there's really two camps politically in it. There is the Church of Satan, which is LaVeyan Satanism, and then there's the Satanic Temple. Now, LaVeyan Satanism and the Church of Satan take a very objectivist view, so it's very libertarian. It's a little more libertarian right wing.
Yeah, okay.
Where they're like, if you can do something, you have the right to do it. The Satanic Temple is not that. The Satanic Temple is very socialist. Yeah, very socialist to a degree. I would say like they haven't really espoused the tenets of Marx yet.
Yeah,
but they're very, very American liberal in that.
Did they start in America?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Both of those organizations are American. The Satanic Temple primarily exists to provide an outlet for people who are experiencing religious discrimination in America. Like they. When a state government tries to put up the 10 Commandments in front of the state house.
Yeah, and you want to, hey, that's church and state.
Exactly. So they'll be like, okay, well, if you guys have the right to do that, we're going to erect a 9-foot Baphomet statue in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, wasn't there was a thing about that. They were trying to do something.
That was the Satanic Temple. One thing else that they did when Texas passed the pretty strict and rigorous abortion laws recently, they decided, okay, well, abortion is a sacrament in our religion, so they have the religious right to practice it. So they basically just use their interpretation of a satanic religion as a loophole around more conservative law.
Yeah, so I know what you mean. So you're using the church or the guise of a religion.
And as far as politics and Satanism goes, with the atheistic Satanists, they're very kind of tied to these much more liberty-oriented belief systems, like libertarianism or left libertarianism, I guess. But the more serious satanic organizations, like the theistic satanic organizations, where they do believe in an entity that they're worshiping or a cosmic force that they're worshiping, a lot of them will totally eschew politics altogether. Some of them...
Is it just because they can't really... If you're thinking that way, can you really subscribe to any of that regular society BS?
Most of the anti-cosmic Satanism, specifically the Temple of the Black Light, and
which I think you mentioned somewhere in here.
Yep, and then the Templum Falsus Cruentus, both of them completely reject politics altogether. Yeah. They're just, we're not fucking talking about it because that is temporal. Yeah. That's a material thing, and it's far below our considerations.
Yeah.
However, You do have organizations like the Order of the Nine Angles and the Temple of Blood, and both of them are very political. And the Order of the Nine Angles is often portrayed as a neo-Nazi organization because a lot of O9A members infiltrate neo-Nazi organizations as a recruitment tactic.
Oh, they're like, you gotta be in the hardest of the hard, or like, I know what you mean.
Yep, and there is a neo-Nazi organization here in the States called Atomwaffen Division. And Atomwaffen Division, when they started, were very much, bread and butter neo-Nazis. Definitely like a kind of hyper-violent. Like they've gone through a lot of media attention on how violent they are.
Yeah.
But they were infiltrated by the Order of the Nine Angles successfully. Okay. And now Atomwaffen Division is still a neo-Nazi organization, but a neo-Nazi organization that preaches
it's like
that brand of Satanism.
Okay, interesting. You got to find those fringe groups, and they just start to like conglomerate on those.
Oh yeah, as far as like satanic recruitment goes, as far as them using political organizations as an avenue to do that, they recognize that Satanism itself is a very fringe, very extreme position to take.
I was gonna say, and it's kind of funny when you think about like right now, I'm like, who would I see like falling more into Satanism?
Yep.
Yeah. How do they target?
And it's so funny. That's probably one of the core differences between atheistic Satanism and most of theistic Satanism is values. What values do they actually hold? The Temple of the Black Light and the Templum Falsus Cruentus are both very strong in that they don't really like the term Satanism because they say we have a lot less in common with other Satanists than we do with Christian Gnostics. Because ultimately that whole belief system is not atheistic. It's founded on Gnosticism and Christian Gnosticism even. Yeah. I know specifically the Temple of the Black Light and the Templum Falsus Cruentus, which are, if we're being honest, the same entity. They're both heavily, heavily influenced by Sabati Zevi, who was a man who lived in Judea in the 1600s, who claimed to be the Messiah. He was a Jewish fella who claimed to be the Messiah, and there was a guy named Nathan of Gaza who was his prophet. Yeah. Because Nathan of Gaza would have revelatory visions and would write them down into prophecies, some of which came true about Sabati Zevi. Sabati Zevi, though, that dude was a party. He that
was a good segue. Anyway.
He did some really interesting things with his life. He obviously started a cult around him. He was excommunicated by Orthodox Judaism. And because of that, he was exiled from Judea and kind of bounced around from place to place, getting kicked out regularly because when you run around telling everyone, I am the Messiah, a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't think so, and not want you around. He ended up in, I don't know, was it Saudi Arabia or Iraq? But they said, we'll let you stay here if you convert to Islam. Yeah. So he converted to Islam. Okay, well. And Nathan of Gaza didn't love that, but was like, no, he did what he had to do to survive. He's still the Messiah. Yeah. But they created a philosophy surrounding specifically Kabbalism and the Qliphoth, where they see, like, everyone who's really into the occult knows about the Kabbalah. Yeah. And
is that the little red string?
No. Okay. The Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism.
Okay. Well, I don't know anything about it, but I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's they see the tree of life, and it has this like geometric pattern that follows all of the different planes from Asaya here to Malkuth, the throne of God. Yeah. And
I'm not going to be like sacred geometry and chakras and all the...
Actually, it's pretty interesting. A lot of people have created like parallel diagrams showing how the chakras can progress in the same fashion that the tree of that the Kabbalah progresses. But what was interesting is that was a really core rooted thing in Jewish mysticism is this tree of life. So much so that Kabbalah, like the name of the thing, is also the name of the practice. Yeah. And That was very well established by that point. It's a very old and storied thing in Judaism, but Sabati Zevi and Nathan of Gaza had a revelation, that led them to seeing the inverse of it as well, which is called the Qliphoth. Now, the Qliphoth is also a pretty storied thing and pretty historical. It's the tree of death. It's a mirror inversion of the Kabbalah. But prior to that, the perspective on it was, it's all evil down there. Yeah. It's evil. Like, the Qlipha, the actual...
The cliff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, the Qlipha are the little planes that mirror on the Kabbalah.
I'm thinking of like Yggdrasil or that.
Very, very similar to that. It's actually a really good kind of analogy in saying like the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil are mirroring to a degree the planes of the Kabbalah, but the Qlipha means shell. It means like empty, hollow,
like
and it's
husk.
Exactly. It's a derogatory term to kind of show just how bad it is down there. But Nathan of Gaza and Zabadi Zevi did not necessarily see it as being bad, and nor did they see the Kabbalah as being good. They thought that the machinations of the divine were beyond good and evil, so they just saw one as an impulse to the creation and the other as an impulse to destruction, and that they work in tandem. Now, they opted for a philosophy of unification where everything works in synchronicity, similar to a lot of the Western interpretations of the Tao. But anti-cosmic Gnosticism, which is the brand of Satanism that I'm probably most familiar with, they hold a different perspective in that they think that unification is not what needs to happen. What needs to happen is the Qliphoth, the forces of chaos destruction that seek to consume reality will win inevitably. They will just destroy all that exists and return all back to nothing. And so they think that anything that lives on the Kabbalah side of things is something that is ultimately negative for their goals, and anything that lives on the Qliphoth side of things is positive for their goals. So they worship what they call Azerate, which is the pentagrammaton instead of the tetragrammaton. Like the tetragrammaton is the kind of
talking like a Merkaba, like a weird
Yahweh.
Oh, like the God,
the name of God.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's funny, Yahweh, as far as I've been able to really discern myself, isn't so much a name as it is a statement. It means I am that I am. So when they ask,
like Alpha and Omega.
Yeah. So when they ask God, what is your name? He says, I am that I am. I'm me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's kind of like, it's really like simple, but like worldly at the same time.
Yeah. But the formula of I am that I am is Yahweh. The 4 letters in Hebrew that spell that word it's called the tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name of God. So the anti-cosmic Gnostics worship Azerate, which is in the Hebrew language is 5 letters. It's the pentagrammaton.
Okay.
But they see that there's also another name for that, which is something I haven't quite figured out how to be able to pronounce. But it is Yahweh, the same letters in Hebrew that spell Yahweh, just inverted, because they don't see the name as a name, they see it as a formula.
Yeah, well, isn't it? So Hebrew is supposed to be that language that it's like numeric as well as like phonetic.
Yep, the gematria.
Yeah,
which is
geometry.
Yep, which is a whole other ball game as well. But the anti-cosmic Gnosticism uses a lot of Kabbalic techniques and a lot of gematria in practices. They see the name of God not as being a name. They see it as being a formula of creation. So invert that, you have a formula of uncreation. Because ultimately what they want is, they think that the foundation of reality as we exist in it today was a mistake.
Okay. Oh, so it was like, we're a cosmic accident.
Kind of, yeah. They think that... what people understand as God, they call the demiurge, which is a very established and rooted thing in Gnosticism in general. Like the demiurge is often referred to as the blind idiot god. Not the highest divine, but the highest divine of this material reality.
So he's got like the ability to do it, but he didn't realize I wasn't really planning on making.
Yep. Just didn't know what he was going to be doing, just did it. And so that's kind of where we are now. But they see the demiurge as being the ultimate enemy. And they see the forces of Anticosmos as being the liberators. Mm-hmm. So they kind of divide it up by everything that moves towards more order, more limit, and more creation, they call cosmos. Mm-hmm. And everything that seeks to destroy limit, foster chaos, and consume reality, they call anticosmos. Because they just see it as two forces kind of dominating reality, shaping the way that reality is. So the tree of death is an inversion of the tree of life to try to bring both of them back down to nothing.
Oh, okay.
Because ultimately what they want is to exist in a state of nothingness. And it's not nothingness like a guy floating in a big black void.
Yeah.
But it is the nothingness as of no thingness.
Interesting enough, I have do that tarot right there. Mm-hmm. There's a card in there that's like no thingness.
It was actually kind of funny. My my personal religious progression started being a very angry teenager, right?
Yeah.
And I got the Satanic Bible because that was the most extreme thing I could find, and that's LaVeyan Satanism. And then I was a LaVeyan Satanist for a short period of time in my teens, and then I realized there was no real spiritual sustenance to it. So
So when you were, and just not to cut you off, were you looking for a purpose when you found it, or were you just trying to be I want to be different?
Well, I would say it was maybe a little column A, a little column B in that there was a lot that I was going through at the time.
As
happens to teenagers. And prior to my teens, I was very much like a polo shirt tucked into slacks with my little cowlick and my wireframe glasses, straight A's and everything, mocked relentlessly by my peers for being like a little nerdy kid. And so when I hit my teens, I was like, fuck all that, man. I want to be someone people are scared of, because I'm tall as shit. I've always been super
you've
tall.
Always been like, okay, cool.
So it was as soon as I started throwing pentagrams on and, black clothing all the time that people stopped picking on me, And I think that there was some sort of subconscious or subliminal association for that, and really fostering the satanic imagery being a strong positive for me. Mm-hmm. Because it was as soon as I had moved towards that direction, I stopped suffering in one specific way.
Aspects of your life that were actually turning around.
Yeah. The problem was I also completely fell apart academically.
Yeah.
And I went from being the really good, honor student to, failing half my classes. But at the same time, I didn't really care. I was very much like a nihilistic little atheist.
Yeah.
So all of that was kind of what led me to LaVeyan Satanism. In that I was also, kind of getting into heavy metal at that point in time.
I was going to actually, there's another question I have, which came first, black metal or Satanism?
That the old chicken or the egg. Yeah. I would say probably black metal. Because I got my first metal record I got was We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll by Black Sabbath. And that kind of led me to, the Disturbed and Korn and all of the
kind of grungy and
all the metal that was popular at that time.
Yeah.
And then I played a game called Brutal Legend because at that point we had fully decided to throw our entire identity into being fans of metal. And Brutal Legend was a video game about heavy metal, basically.
Okay.
It's a blast still to this day. I recommend anyone play it. But the soundtrack for it is excellent. And it actually introduced me to a handful of bands that I had never heard before. The core one that ended up becoming really important for my musical journey was Emperor. And I knew that Emperor was, as I got into Emperor, I learned that Emperor was affiliated with, Satanism. What kind of Satanism, I didn't really know. So I just jumped to the first thing I found, which was LaVeyan Satanism, because obviously it's they have the best publicists.
Yeah, well, I was going to say something, mainstream now, I guess.
And it was through that journey I had kind of started my development, and then I started my own little cult at the high school where I had 6 or 7 dudes, and I would lead us in rituals, but half of them were just shit I made up. And it was a good time, but it was the deeper I got into like truly understanding what LaVeyan Satanism is, I realized like this is, empty. There's no real spiritual sustenance here. And funny enough, I had met someone who introduced me to the wonders of Buddhism. So I got really into Buddhism for a while. And initially it was your kind of bread and butter Mahayana Buddhism. But then I discovered through my own research Vajrayana Buddhism, which is, occult Buddhism. It's very, very interesting in how it's kind of structured to help you reach enlightenment.
Okay.
In that, a lot of the core mainstream Buddhist practices are like, just, be present and let go of your
awareness and the the actual spirit of being and participating in that whole life thing.
Yeah, and it's basically learning to divorce yourself from your attachments and thereby ending the suffering that you experience as a result from being attached to things. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously still present in Vajrayana Buddhism, but as Damien Eccles puts it, it's like throwing gas on that fire because there's all this real ritual involved and all these practices that are involved that, whether or not they are, directly contacting outside entities to try to get them to help you reach enlightenment. That's still kind of subject for debate, whether or not it's very rooted in theism or whether it's all, for psychodramatic effect. There's a pretty strong debate about that, but I loved it and I got a lot from it, and it actually helped me kind of move deeper into Eastern mysticism, Eastern religion in general.
Yeah.
And I got really into the Tao. The Tao, obviously, it has the longevity that it has because there's a lot in there to unpack. The whole religion is basically just that one book, whereas, with Christianity, you could say, oh, well, the whole religion is the Bible, but not really. The whole religion is the various interpretations of the Bible and all the hundreds of thousands of organizations that exist around it trying to tell you what it is. Whereas the Tao is just the Tao. You'll never meet a Taoist who is adamant that they know better than you.
Yeah.
But the Tao led me into other Indian practices as well. Kind of initially vaguely into Hinduism.
Yeah.
But more into Jainism and Sikhism.
Okay. Now, I've never heard of either of those.
They're cool. They're worth looking into. Yeah. Neither one of them I got heavily involved with, but they were also just kind of stepping stones along the way to the real love of my life at that point in time, which ended up becoming Hinduism. I got really into Hinduism because there are a lot of really interesting parallels between Hinduism and, Germanic and Norse and Slavic paganism.
Yeah, because there's all that, polytheism.
Yep, and they all actually kind of came from the same little home, which was, the Indo-European religion, which is a fascinating thing to unpack because this is 40,000 years ago. These people are practicing this religion, and then the tribes split up, go their own ways.
So one went to the Asiatic Indus Valley, or one went to the...
Yep, and the one that tribe that went to the Indus Valley took that same religion. It became Hinduism.
Yeah.
That same religion became Norse paganism, became German paganism, became Slavic paganism. They're all rooted in that same belief structure. Yeah. Actually, same with Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah.
They came from that as well.
Because I always thought, and this is just my interpretation, that it was Roman, it just kind of they're well, we found the Greeks aesthetically pleasing, and we found their their philosophy pleasing, so we're just gonna take all that and then
and then their geometric closeness. The real difference, if we're being honest, between Greek mythology and Roman mythology is language. And the aesthetics are very similar, but the Romans do have definitely a unique bent on it. But it is basically the same religion, just they use different names for everybody. Yeah. Because a lot of the myths are exactly the same. All the gods' roles, for the most part, are exactly the same. The differences really are semantic.
Yeah.
We can argue about them being different religions, but...
it really wasn't.
if we want to take the whole semanticism thing as far as we can, that we can say all religions are the same religion. They just argue over semantics.
Yeah, pretty much, right? It's like, well.
But yeah, it's I got led into Hinduism through that, and at the same time, I had met some people who were really into Norse neo-paganism. Mm-hmm. So I also was getting into that.
Okay.
And I actually devoted a lot of time and energy to Norse neo-paganism because, you know, young white boy here in America, you want to be a Viking.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, trust me, man. Trust me, man.
So it was until I became an adult and realized, oh, I'm not a Viking.
Yeah.
I'm an American.
Yeah.
And I still hold a lot of love for Norse neo-paganism, and I still use a lot of the structures, philosophies, and practices in what I do. But if you ask me point blank, like, are you Asatru? I'm not. You know, like, I fuck with Odin. You know, I think he's cool, but I'm not gonna devote my entire life and being to a culture that I don't really even know if my ancestors were a part of or not.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not really the kind of person anymore to put a whole lot of intense value on what my ancestors did. You know, I definitely see the value in preserving culture and tradition.
Yeah.
But for me personally, like, fuck, dude, I'm an American. You know, my ancestors came from all over the place. Like, if I'm going to preserve all of their cultures, I'm going to be celebrating a holiday every goddamn day. I'm going to worship 500 gods. Like,
you'll be stepping on some toes somehow, some way.
Yeah, like, I'm good. You know, I'm just going to continue to refine and develop what I've got going on. And that was kind of what led me into Norse paganism. But it was in that time when I was first introduced to the Templum Falsus Cruentus, the TFC.
Yeah, which is not the, what's the other one? The Temple of what now?
Temple of Black Light.
That's the one.
Yeah. Which the Templum Falsus Cruentus actually emerged from the Temple of the Black Light.
Yeah.
The Temple of the Black Light has a core text called the Book of Sitra Achra, which is a fucking read. It is. I recommend it to anyone who can get a copy for less than $700.
Yeah. It's one of those like sought after books, huh?
Yeah. Good luck getting a copy for less than $700. The only way to get one of their books at a reasonable price is to buy them from the publisher when the publishing is happening. Because even then, I own the Book of Sitra Achra and I paid $70 for it. But $70 a lot better than $700.
Like that's a whole.
Yep.
It's like 10%.
You know, if you want to get a copy of a lot of those out of print books, like, you're going to be paying hundreds of dollars. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of people are scalpers who will just buy like 20 copies when the book first comes out and then resell them like a year later for a crazy markup.
Yep.
But I was actually, before I learned about the Temple of the Black Light, I was introduced to the Templum Falsus Cruentus. And that specific connection for me actually did come out of music. Obviously, I'm a big fan of black metal. I fucking play black metal.
Yeah.
But I was, especially in my late teens and early 20s, heavily influenced by a band called Watain. And Watain is probably, for me, one of the more genuine bands out there. Where, like, Dark Funeral's fun. You know, they yell about Satan and they paint pentagrams on everything, but you talk to the guys and they're like, nah, you know, it's just, we don't like Christianity, so we just want to piss off the Christians.
It's more of like a counterculture than it is like an actual movement or...
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas you talk to the members of Watain, like, they live and breathe everything they're saying. You meet the men and they smell like death. Yeah. Because they surround themselves with death, because they are at their core death worshippers.
Yeah.
You know, when I went to go see them for the first time, I, bludgeoned my way to the front of the crowd because it was my favorite band. Of course, I'm going to see them as close as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yelling the lyrics at the vocalist, and the vocalist is giving me love back. His interpretation of that, which is like angry eyes and pointing at me, you know. But he gets off stage at some point in the middle of the show during an instrumental passage. Yeah. And he has this ram's skull, right? Uh-huh. With a chalice built into the middle of it.
Yeah.
And walks up to me and then gets this big handful of stuff and rubs it on my face. It's ox blood.
Yeah.
You know, because every show is a ceremony. Uh-huh. You know, it's not like they put on a great show for sure. Like, it's a really enjoyable and entertaining thing. But, you know, every show is a ceremony.
Yeah.
They are doing ritual up there. They are actively engaging in death worship and using the adoration of the crowd to fuel that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, actually, one of my friends, he's a friend now, I didn't know him at the time, but he was working security for that show. And he was standing outside, and he said at one point during the show, and I know exactly what point it was during the show, because everything felt like the air felt thick in there. But he was like doing rounds around the building, and he said the wind was blowing towards the building from every direction.
Yeah. It was like sucking it into the actual venue.
Yep.
That's always, dude, that is always freaky because you're just like, okay, so what are we doing right now?
Yep. And it was one of the more intense experiences of my life, even. Yeah. I think it was the level of passion, especially for me, experiencing that, that really heightened everything. And I felt every energetic shift that happened in that building.
Yeah.
Like, fucking liberal atheist shows up who has a passing interest in black metal. They go to the show and they're like, it was really fun. They had human skeletons on the stage. That was wild. But for me, someone who is, heavily influenced in the same philosophy that band is talking about, watching them do the things that I do at home by myself on stage in front of hundreds of people.
Right.
And then leaving the show covered in blood. Of course, I'm going to have a great fucking time.
Yeah, and just like the energy and the music energy, the actual energy of the whole entire like event, like you think that can like that's bringing something from the outside.
They're just using it to call attention. They're using all of the adoration, all of the focus from the crowd to channel through something.
Yeah.
Now, whatever they're actually doing, whatever they're channeling it through, whatever they're channeling it through for, that's for them to know and us not to.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly content with that. I think I was 18 when I joined the Watain Disciples. And
so do you have to, is that like their fan base type of thing, or is it more like
it's a fan club in the grossest possible terms.
Yeah.
Like it is really a fan club, but boy, man, I have met some seriously fucked up people in that fan club. I've participated in fan clubs for other bands before, and most of them are like, just nerdy dudes circle jerking about what gear someone's using.
Yeah.
Not the Disciples, man. The Disciples are very much, you want to take some acid, do a fat line of cocaine, and then we'll do ritual until 3 a.m.
That's their fun, huh?
That's their fun. They're not the whole, Watain's coming to my town, I'm going to go see them. They're like, all right, Watain's playing 18 shows here. I can take a month off of work and I can make 9 of them.
Yeah, so this is what I'm doing. In college, I used to have buddies who were like, it was basically the same thing, except like replace Satanism with hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually funny, like when I wear my Watain vest a lot, so it's battered and beaten, and when people see it, they're like, what is that?
Is that the one that you wear to work sometimes?
Yeah, that's the one I wore here today.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, what is that? I'm like, well, like, how the Deadheads would follow the Grateful Dead around and sling acid
around the country.
Exactly. The Disciples are kind of like that, but there's a different bent on it. So that's the easiest way to describe it to people, rather than going into the philosophy behind Watain. I mean, they're even their name. They were fucking teenagers, and they took it from a Vaughn song. Mm-hmm. And whether they knew what they wanted it to mean at the time or not, I don't really know for sure. But they ended up either discovering, or it was intentional all along, I don't really know, that Wat, like W-A-T in Thai,
is like temple.
Is temple.
Yeah.
And then, A-I-N, Ein in Hebrew is nothingness.
Yeah. So that's like temple nothing.
Yep. The temple of nothing.
Yeah. So, actually on the idea of ritual, just like, well, one, I guess, have you ever been a part of rituals that were like rituals?
So that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because, like, what do we define as a ritual?
Well,
is it like an individual ritual or a group ceremony?
Yeah. I was always thinking of group ceremony or something where it's like, okay, we have a collective of people, we have a common goal, and we will do the steps necessary to fulfill that common goal.
Yes. I mean, probably in the interpretation of ritual or ceremony, yes, I have been a part of it. The group thing was mainly prominent for me in... Actually, I had a couple points in my life. When I was doing that thing in high school that was all bullshit.
Yeah.
I was just taking... It was all bullshit as far as... And I say that because I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was definitely doing something because we definitely experienced events because of it.
Interesting. This is what I was also saying, because like when you think ritual, you're like, okay, it's it's either usually to cast a spell of some kind or to either summon or I don't even know really,
Yeah. We did also at the time I was really influenced by Lovecraft.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Lovecraft's fucking awesome. But I mean, there's also a raging debate about whether or not it's all bullshit and fiction or not. But I don't know, man. I kind of lean a little more towards the Lovecraft stuff isn't all bullshit. In that, at the very least, there's somewhat of a tulpa effect happening.
You mean like the fact that they just the Lovecraftian world is kind of like...
Whether or not any of that existed energetically before Lovecraft or not, I don't really know, and I don't really care enough to debate about it.
Yeah, go dive in.
But as for whether it exists now, I would say I do think it does to some degree. Like, do I think there's a city sunken beneath the sea called Nirelathotep where Cthulhu sleeps? No, not necessarily. Maybe, but not necessarily. But I do remember I had about 8 of us, and we were trying to do a summoning of Nirelathotep.
Mm-hmm. And is that a specific thing?
Yes.
Demon entity?
Nirelathotep is an entity in the Lovecraftian universe that is called the Crawling Chaos. Often depicted as a black silhouette figure, sometimes with tentacles, sometimes without. But we conducted this ceremony to try to summon Nirelathotep. Nothing happened. We're like, oh, fuck it, let's just go about our business. And then like maybe 8 hours later, midnight, 1 in the morning-ish, we got really stoned and then wanted to walk to the graveyard because, we're fucking edgy teenagers. And halfway there, we see the street light where this guy is standing underneath the street light. And the closer we get, the more we can kind of realize, oh shit, there are no discernible features on that person whatsoever. It is just a void shaped like a human standing under that streetlight with its head just kind of vibrating.
Yeah.
And so we turned around and we went home because we were like, that is a bad sign. And I mean, there were 5 of us that night who saw it, and 3 of us took part in that ritual. So we all kind of came to the conclusion of, it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not that's a shared hallucination or not, I don't really know, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
Because I definitely do draw a lot of influence from Discordianism in that I think that all of reality is the shared hallucination we all agree on the most.
Yeah.
So the hallucinations that some of us agree on and others don't are just as real to the people who see them as they possibly could be.
Which is what I've kind of come into my own belief, where it's just maybe it happened, maybe it doesn't, but I believe that person believes that it happened, or to them it definitely did, or something. It's that kind of experience in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. So I kind of took the Ram Dass approach to it of, oh, did you say it happened? Oh, okay, then it happened.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of people say, well, when you read the Bible, you have to read it metaphorically, not literally. You talk to Ram Dass, and he would tell you, no, read that shit literally. Yeah, just take it all at face value, and then learn.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter whether or not it happened or not.
Yeah.
What matters is how it's going to impact you in your work, in your development. Yeah. And if you can take all the miracles as actually happening, then you're going to find your mind being a lot more open to possibilities you didn't really consider before. Which is why I'm not a big fan of people who are strictly empiricists. As far as scientific theory goes, or any venture of a scientific nature, I'm going to be pretty empirical about it. But to me, the thing about spirituality, the thing about religion, and all of this realm of things is it violates at its very core a prime tenet of the scientific method, which is that you have to be an impartial observer observing whatever is happening.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can't be an impartial observer of whatever you are doing, of whatever's happening internally. there's no way to be impartial about it. And at a certain point, you got to kind of ask, well, am I even the observer? What is the I in this statement? Is this the awareness watching the ego? Because the awareness, if you take the awareness without the awareness can't make judgment. Mm-hmm. It's the ego that makes judgment. And it's judgment that is a core process in the scientific method. So you really can't be scientific about spirituality. It's just it's not possible. And because of that, a lot of materialists will completely discount spirituality altogether because it doesn't fit into the materialist framework, which is really the only way they can see reality.
Which I'm not going to lie, we have a lot of that here at this show. That's just a shot at my boys. I'm sorry.
I don't blame people for being materialists. I don't blame people for being atheists because my big thing is I don't really give a shit what anyone else believes. Mm-hmm. I know the work that I need to be doing, and I'm going to continue to do that work because a core part of it is not being attached and not being attached to anything, especially the thoughts of other people.
Well, yeah, things that like you really aren't, technically aren't even like affecting you in any way or meaningfully.
It doesn't affect me until an atheist decides that I'm causing enough trouble and tries to shoot me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what atheist is going to try to shoot a religious person like that, you know? Atheists love to kind of tout the whole, well, what atheistic genocides have happened? I'm like, well, to be totally straight, I wouldn't say many atheistic genocides have happened because atheists don't really care about genes. Yeah. Atheists aren't really after ethnic groups. Atheists, definitely modern atheists just kind of are snide about things. And that's fair. Be snide if that's what gets you off. But I will say a lot of what happened in the Soviet Union, like persecution of religious groups, because you can't have a religion take precedence over the state philosophy.
Yeah.
Like here in America, part of the state philosophy is just, believe whatever the fuck you want, I don't really care. Which, whether or not that actually is true, it just kind of depends on where you live and who's in power.
Yep.
Like if you live in the very conservative areas, then obviously you're not supposed to be a Satanist, you're not supposed to be a Muslim, you're not supposed to be anything other than your fucking cookie cutter Christian.
I understand.
Oh yeah, so I don't really care. Like my father-in-law is very much an atheist. It doesn't bother me. He picks on me about being religious. I pick on him about being atheist. And at the end of the day, we hug and say goodbye. It doesn't really matter because for me, personal relationships aren't really affected by beliefs.
Yeah.
Which some of my friends do take issue with because of some of my other friends.
Uh-huh.
I am friends with a lot of people who have really problematic beliefs as far as, what is acceptable in 2022. And a lot of my friends who are very much on the opposite end of that spectrum resent the fact that I have friends there.
And is this on like religious or spiritual grounds, or is this like social and?
Most of my friends who are particularly spiritually present aren't really super aggressively judgmental.
Mm-hmm. I would say the same.
About
me.
They're very much kind of. At least they're not judgmental about religion. They're more just kind of like, but if that belief structure helps you reach the goal, then use that belief structure to help you reach the goal.
Whatever, man.
Yeah, I would say my communist friends don't like my fascist friends.
Well, okay,
and vice versa.
Going down some political lines is a little harder to separate it.
So I'm as far as my personal politics go, I try to avoid them. I used to be really political in a number of different directions.
Yeah.
So I try not to put a whole lot of energy into that anymore because I feel like it really is just kind of detracting from the work. And a lot of people kind of think like, oh, you're just, you just say that you don't care because it's difficult and you want to drop out. And I'm like, it is difficult. Yeah. I want to drop out because this shit is distracting. It's going to take all my fucking time and energy away from all the stuff I'm trying to get done. And the shit I'm trying to get done is I'm trying to be enlightened in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do whatever I can to try to be enlightened in this lifetime. And honestly, I feel like at least at the point of development that I'm at right now, political activism isn't going to help. Uh-huh. It's just going to make things more difficult. It's just going to create more attachments. I mean, that's not to say that I don't have an interest in politics, because I really do. But my interest in politics, it lies a lot more in geopolitics than it does in political philosophy. You know, like political philosophy used to be my fucking bag, but it was until I decided that ideology is the enemy, which is my core belief, is that thought itself is the enemy and ideologies are just massive thoughts.
Yeah, well, thoughts manifested into actions there.
Yep. The thought form constructs, I feel, are the thing that obscure us from experiencing peak reality. And ideologies are thought form constructs turned into machines that are specifically engineered to subject people to them. So as far as, you know, the classical interpretation of a demon goes, the evil, spooky thing that's lurking and trying to corrupt you and turn you to sin, for me, that is ideology.
Yeah.
You know, I put a lot of value in animism and panpsychism.
Yeah.
And I think that consciousness is omnipresent. I think that everything experiences consciousness in one form or another.
Yeah. So you mean go into that a little bit.
It's I think that consciousness is the foundation of reality.
Okay. Yes.
But before everything else is just awareness, is just the I, you know, not I am anything, you know, like an ashtray might be I am ashtray.
Yeah.
You are I am Patrick.
Yeah.
I am me.
Yeah.
But you reduce that to I am just presence.
Because there's no form.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's formless presence. You know, presence without definition, because definition is limit. So we're taking away the limit here, and so all we have is presence.
Yeah.
But let's take it a step further. So I am, still two words.
Yeah.
There's still an action there. That presence is the action. So that action is being present, is being extant in one form or another. So if we reduce that even further, it's just I, just awareness, just pure peak, unadulterated consciousness in no other form. And to me, ultimately, that is what the highest God is. There's a Sikh phrase that I don't remember in its native language, and I'm probably going to butcher in its English translation, but it roughly translates, it's a war cry. And these guys would basically yell, cry aloud, for truth is the highest God. And to me, a pure objective truth is something that you can really only experience without any limit. And that is the limit of, you know, extant definition or the limit of action.
Okay.
So if we remove the I am this, we remove the this from that, then you have the awareness in action.
Yeah.
You remove the am, then all you have left is just awareness.
Yeah.
Just pure unadulterated truth.
Okay.
You know, and for me, that ultimately is what God is. And I think that's actually something that I took from Hinduism. You know, and as much as I use satanic iconography, you know, I'm very, very much in love with God, with the beloved, because I see the interpretations of the Christian God or the, you know, whatever that authoritarian ruler creator figure is, that's the demiurge.
Yeah.
The highest God, you know, beyond, you know, Yahweh and Azerite, the highest God is the void, is just the empty, pure, endless expanse of infinite possibility with no definition.
Yeah.
You know, I use the term void because I fucking love that word. You know,
the Ba'oti's void, or something, just like
exactly.
So, like empty and depthless, almost.
Yeah, it's a state of existence beyond existence, because there is no definition, there is no limit, there is no form, and there is no action.
Yeah,
it's just void. It's just infinite possibility in every possible direction. And I am of the mind that is what existed prior to this reality, and that is what is going to exist after this reality. Whether another reality like this, or whether this fucking reality happens to crop up again in between in a cycle, wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
Do I know what's going to happen? No, I don't. So I don't tell people like, oh, and it's a cycle where the universe reincarnates itself, because I don't fucking know that. I love telling people I'm an evangelical fundamentalist agnostic.
Yeah, because it's just like, well, drop all the rest of that off.
I operate under a lot of assumptions with really strong conviction behind those assumptions. Yeah. Like this peak consciousness exists because I've experienced it. You know, I've experienced that peak consciousness for fleeting moments, and that's the ultimate goal for me.
And when you say peak consciousness, you mean
awareness without definition, without limit, just pure consciousness. That state of being. It's funny, actually. I got closest to achieving that twice through ceremonial practice and once through smoking a shitload of DMT.
Okay.
So I'm also an advocate for
psychedelic.
Oh yeah.
Because I have another question here, which it's really nice. I don't even have to ask anything. I'm just sitting here and I'm like, all right, check that one off. But just what do you think psychedelics have in the ability to give us a window into the spiritual world?
Yeah, I think the easiest metaphor for me, at least, is to describe reality as not necessarily like a simulation in that this is all fake. It's a simulation. Like I do believe it's fake, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
The easiest metaphor, though, is to describe reality like a computer system.
Okay.
In that everything is based off of these codes, right? You know, we take the prime coding source is the basic laws of physics. Yeah. And then the more advanced codes are going to be your atomic structures. I mean, your subatomic structures, and then your atomic structures. Yeah. And then chemical formulations. Mm-hmm. And we are really complex, really advanced biomechanical computers. Yeah. Now, when we take in certain chemicals, it's basically like loading in a certain program. Yeah. And what we are is not this body, which is the biomechanical computer that we are either inhabiting or operating, depending on who you ask. I say it's a little bit of both. But when we take these chemicals in and run this specific program, it's almost like it gets us access to parts of reality that we wouldn't have access to otherwise or didn't have access to before. Mm-hmm. I will say the amount of acid that I've taken in my life has definitely left a bit of a permanent impression on me. Yeah. In that, I would have been at work having a conversation with somebody, and then all of a sudden a specific frame of mind comes in, and then I see that person's face, and everything behind them starts to kaleidoscope. Yeah, yeah. Where it's not so much, people are like, oh man, acid flashbacks, they're such a trip. Like, no, what you're doing is you're reverting to pure consciousness for just a moment. Mm-hmm. And I would say not that acid or psilocybin or mescaline or dimethyltryptamine has necessarily, having those in my system has created necessarily a physical response that does that, whereas much as they've put me in these frames of mind enough
that you can re-see into it. Yep. And it completely
you're seeing your consciousness from a third person perspective. Yeah. Which is what I think, as far as psychotherapy goes, is probably the best and most valuable tool that psychedelics has to offer. Is they allow you to view yourself more objectively, and I do see THC as being a very mild psychedelic. Mm-hmm. So if you take a shitload of it, or if you take something like THCO acetate, then you're going to have a psychedelic experience. Yeah, like I took fucking bombed a bunch of THCO acetate and got visuals, which I didn't even know was possible from a THC or a THC isomer or a variant, you know? But it happened, and it was really cool. Funny enough, when I can't really take THC anymore. Just it doesn't agree with me. But when I used to smoke, I would smoke a lot of weed, and that particular frame of mind that it would put me in is very similar to smoking a little bit of DMT. But the difference for me was I would smoke an asinine amount of weed, and I would be spending a lot of money on that, and I would also be lethargic, and it would be kind of hard to focus. Yeah, it's got
other sort of side effects.
Yeah, but smoking a little bit of DMT would give me that same euphoria, that same ability to detach and view myself more objectively without the lethargy and without the lack of focus, which was really nice, and without the anxiety. But for me, like, I'll fucking take 600 micrograms of LSD and love every second of it. And, I take one hit off of a joint, and I'm like, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I guess your thoughts on like psilocybin microdosing, kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I actually microdosed psilocybin for a long time when I was trying to quit smoking, and it helped a lot. It helped me kind of recognize a lot of the unhealthy tendencies that I was having. It helped me it gave me like another fixation.
Yeah,
was I think the main thing though. And I stopped microdosing, and then I didn't smoke for like 3 months after that. A major event happened that was particularly stressful.
Yeah.
So I went back, bought a pack of smokes, and since then I've been a little more nihilistic about my nicotine abuse. Like I'm not gonna pretend like I don't have an addiction, that I don't abuse the nicotine chemical, because I abuse the shit out of that molecule. But I enjoy it. Whether or not that enjoyment, it comes from a place of sating an addiction or a genuine enjoyment of the sensation, I don't really care anymore. I just like it. I do think that microdosing psychedelics has a ton of benefits. Yeah. I think that a lot of people could benefit from it. But the problem for me with psychedelics is the culture surrounding it.
Yeah.
That touts it as the miracle cure for everything.
Yeah.
When it definitely is probably one of the most potent psychological medications that we could possibly conceive of.
Yeah.
But don't fucking give acid to someone with advanced schizophrenia.
Yeah. You have to, there's a method to do it. And I understand that, because that was a big thing when like marijuana first got like legalized. Everybody's just like, like everything that you're like, that would be great if we just found the one plant, and it's just been sitting under our noses the whole time, But
a lot of people also will tend to abuse psychedelics and then have a terrible experience with it, and then that's when a lot of the bad hype around it comes, because like Dr. Leary said, what's most important? Set and setting.
Yes.
Like I'm very familiar with LSD. I have a very strong personal relationship to that molecule, and I feel like I could take it in any scenario and be fine now.
Yeah.
But if your first or your second time taking acid is at a festival, and then, your buddy decides to fucking boof some heroin and ODs, you're going to have a really bad time.
Yeah.
It's not the acid that did that to you. It's the environment that you were in while being on acid. I mean, I took 400 micrograms and then found out that I had to play a show.
Yeah.
And so I get up on stage in front of like 300 people like on acid.
And you're just tripping. You're like, crap.
It was... I love telling people it was either the best show or the worst show I've ever played, because when you can make a crowd of like black metal, death metal, and noise fans like visually uncomfortable, you either did something really good or really bad.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning towards I did something really good, because this one fellow that I know named Raul, who I adore and respect, came up to me afterwards. And he loved it. He was like, "Oh my god, dude, that was so fucking good. That was so brutal." I was like, "Okay, man." Like, I don't know if that was what I was going for, because I don't know I was really going for anything up there.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm in survival.
Yeah, I'm just in survival mode.
Just being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I take psychedelics therapeutically.
Yeah.
For like mental health concerns. I take psychedelics recreationally to bond with people in my tribe,
which is interesting, because it's like it does seem recreational, because that's what I would consider what I do with it. Like I would say that the effects of doing that versus like socially drinking for a night, you come out with certain things that stick with you way longer, personally, just from experience.
And I know that there's some hype about LSD being bad for your heart. I have yet to see that particular study.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly kind of convinced it's more just, kind of urban myth or apocryphal, where somebody, took some acid and then did like 3 grams of cocaine and had a heart attack, and everyone's like, everyone knew he was taking acid. No one knew he was taking cocaine.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, to be perfectly frank though, like, I've taken acid and then done like too much cocaine.
Yeah.
And those have been really fun times too. But, I would say, like, when I take acid recreationally, it is to bond with other, like, members of my tribe, that being, like, family or friends. But it's always, like, it's definitely fun, a good time, but it's also therapeutic in those instances, too, because you are really developing the relationships that you have. And it's a really positive thing. But I also take psychedelics spiritually.
Yeah.
I haven't done it with acid in a while, because acid is... like, it's a 14-hour investment.
Yeah.
And at this point, like I've got a job, I've got a fiance.
You don't have a lot of 14-hour stretches. You can just kind of
and with that kind of stuff, you have to do it alone. So it's not like I can take a heroic dose of acid and then do ritual while Kenna is sitting on the bed next to me on TikTok.
Yeah,
like I can't do that.
Yeah, it's that environment thing.
Yep, it's not conducive to a positive environment. So instead, I'll just be like, hey, woman I love, do you want to call some of our friends and then we can all take some acid together?
Yeah,
and then while we're all taking acid together, I'll find moments to like for myself where I can. Even if it's just like, like, all right, I got to go take a shit and then just go in the bathroom and stare at yourself in the mirror for like 10 minutes and just do the work and then go about your night. It's nice. Or, take some acid and then go into a pitch black room or cover your eyes and then put in some headphones and listen to something that's specifically engineered for the work. Then you can get a lot done without a massive investment of time, in that you can use the social gathering as kind of an excuse. Yeah. And then, everyone's on acid together. So that way the whole time you're not, just, being a high maniac around a bunch of sober people, because that's never a comfortable thing. And it's never conducive to the work, Like, definitely I like being uncomfortable on psychedelics sometimes because I like challenging myself. Yeah. But for me, that's more, confronting myself with things. Yeah. Never so much like, I'm going to take acid and hang out with a sober person because I don't care whether or not I'm making them uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm not that doesn't really feel conducive towards the work because I try to be considerate. Yeah. And I mean, definitely if the work calls for that, then the work calls for that. Uh-huh. And who am I? Not my will, but thy will, O Lord. Yeah. Got to go about my business. But I mean, to be frank, the work never really calls to like try to make other people uncomfortable. Yeah. Unless they're also doing the work. And then the game of cat and mouse gets a lot more developed.
That it does. And thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Skeptical Eye for the Paranormal Guys and our talk with Chris Faverino, friend of the show. And what a wealth of information that guy, huh? And we'll be picking up this conversation next week in part 2, where we'll continue to discuss things such as Satanism, the occult, paranormal, all the good stuff, that we're usually talking about.